Hi, BookTube. Welcome to the History Shelf. I am your host, Peg. Yeah, so this video, I haven't posted one in almost 2 weeks or more. Just a quick personal note, we've been pretty sad around here. My dog of over 9 years, we almost made it to 10, but she was definitely at least 14 or 15, maybe even older, because she was a rescue. My adorable, badass, heroic Gidget, um, went on to greener pastures. Her heart was just, she had a heart murmur and it finally just caught up and to her and she couldn't really breathe. So it's about 2 weeks on Monday since we had to part with her, and this whole household is just kind of lost without her. She was the centralizing, she was the drill master. She got everyone up and going. Now, as Martine and I are adjusting, which is very hard because we miss her every day. I look at Goldie, my other Chihuahua, who is more passive and quiet and kind of self-contained. I think she's noticing it now, and we just got back from a walk, and I just want to do something for her. I know she misses her, and we all miss Gidget so much. So I've been kind of quiet because I have not been in the mood, and I wasn't even reading anything for well over a week. It's really inconsolable. Um, Gidget was my heart dog. We had a connection. And there will never be another Gidget. So there's days I can talk about it without without crying, and then there's days where I can't even think about it. Anyway, but I'm here, and I am going to keep on keeping on in the spirit of Gidget, because that's what she did. She came through so many different things. She was a tough little Chihuahua. She was a tough little girl, and look forward to seeing her again someday. So, this video is way overdue. This is a used book haul of epic proportions. The first time I went to Second and Charles, it's a used chain of bookstores, and you can sell other things there that you can sell back video games, music, whatever, movies. I met Bill of the Rutenberg Library, Bill Rutenberg. He was in Denver, and we met up there, and we had a great time, and we shopped and talked, and I think it was probably several weeks after that I went back by myself, obviously, and I just had a massive shopping spree. And as you can see from the picture in the thumbnail, I had 2 packed bags, and even the packed bags, I still had 2 more that I couldn't fit and I had to carry out, which was kind of comedic. But these are all like really outstanding old like backlist history books, and books that I'd never seen before but looked really interesting, or they had different format, like different sizes that you don't see publishers making anymore. And so I bought a ton now. So this might be a 2-part video. We'll see how many I can get through. I have got a bag here at my feet, but I'm going to start with one of these. So again, a mixture of history, mostly history, and I think there might be a couple like anthropology in here. So let's see if anything here appeals to you guys. Again, these were all used bookstore gems that I found at Second and Charles. All right, so we start off with the history of the conquest of Peru. So it's a different kind of book. It almost looks like a textbook, right? By William H. Prescott. And I was trying to find out like who the publisher was on this. It was just such an interesting book. The size is very different, and it doesn't even say who the the publisher is, but it's the collection of those writings from William Prescott, which I had seen in some other versions, but I think this contains all of it. So it was like it must be like print on demand or something like that, but it has everything in here from what I can tell. So this was published in 1847. So definitely, a dated book, but at the same time, very interested in that topic. So I picked it up. My camera better not start glitching again. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so the next one I got, this one was a little bit more, but I love the big format. This is like one of those books you'd find like in a museum book. And obviously it came from a library because it's kind of got the Mylar cover and stuff. But this is The Spanish Frontier in North America. Look at that. Sorry for the glares, all my different lamps in the room. By David J. Weber. This is from Yale. But this is a nice, big, like, hefty, oversized book. Ooh, if you take, yeah. The Mylar's coming. It's not even taped in, but again, it kind of goes in with my interest in the early Spanish conquistadors and their explorations of the American Southwest. And I had never heard of this one before, and it's richly illustrated and lots of maps and photographs. And so I thought this was a deal. I'll just give you a quick synopsis here. It says, in 1513, when Ponce de Leon stepped ashore on a beach of what is now Florida, Spain gained its first foothold in North America. For the next 300 years, Spaniards ranged through the continent, building forts to defend strategic places, missions to proselytize Indians, and farms, ranches, and towns to reconstruct a familiar Iberian world. This engagingly written and well-illustrated book presents an up-to-date overview of the Spanish colonial period in North America. It provides a sweeping account not only of the Spaniards' impact on the lives, institutions, and environments of the native peoples, but also of the effect of native North Americans on these societies and cultures of the Spanish settlers. So I'll just read that because there's more to read, but I've got a lot to show you. So anyway, that was a pretty neat find, huh? At the used bookstore. I think it was $12.50. All right. Now we're going into the bag. Again, here's the bag. All right. Oh, it's heavy. Okay, first book. I had never heard of this history of the French Revolution, and apparently this is volume 1, but we'll see. This is Twilight of the Old Order, 1774 to 1778, by Claude Manceron, and it's part of the Age of the French Revolution, volume 1. So I had never seen this before, and I came across it. It was $5, so I say I'll take it. Of course, I don't have volume 2, but we'll see what I think of this first one. It's translated from the French by Patricia Wolfe, so it's Claude Manceron. Oh, there's 4 volumes in this series, apparently. There's this one, Twilight of the Old Order. I wonder, and I didn't see any of the others there, so we'll see. Then volume 2 is The Wind from America. Volume 3, Their Gracious Pleasure. And volume 4, Toward the Brink. Let's see here. In Twilight of the Old Order, a preeminent French historian definitively captures the winds of change. In Paris, young Marie Antoinette flirts at balls and writes intimately to her mother in Austria, while Madame de Barry saves Louis XV's dignity. The Marquis de Sade is hunted down for his crimes. Lafayette, starry-eyed, serves under General Washington. And Benjamin Franklin brings the torch of new ideas to French thinkers gasping for relief from a devious aristocracy ruling a neglected people. Goethe is read all over Europe, while Voltaire, the intellectual conscience of France, dies just 2 months before Rousseau. The revolution gains momentum, often day by day, from France to London, from Vienna to Russia and America. Monumental yet vivid as a novel, Claude Manceron's masterfully researched Twilight of the Old Order chronicles an era in bold pattern and intimate detail. Contemporary figures, famous, infamous, and obscure, cross paths in interwoven vignettes that illuminate political, social, cultural, and personal concerns. Oh. This sounds really good, and it's a nice mixture of like intellectual, the cultural scene, along with the political state. So Very cool. Yeah, they don't kind of make books like this anymore that little chapter headings have a different picture of someone here, a little portrait. That's really neat. So that sounded great. Now, as far as the other volumes go, maybe I'll read this, and if I like it, I'll continue, and I'll try to find the others, and like used online or whatnot. Let me just take a sip here. Okay. Next, this is anthropology, I think. So let me see here. Let me save this one because there was I bought two by the same author. Let me go with this one. This one I think I'm going to need to either ditch the dust jacket or just try to reinforce it. And I need to watch those videos again to see how you guys tape up these paper covers so well. This is about archaeology. This is Hands on the Past. Pioneer Archaeologists Tell Their Own Story by C.W. Sarum. It's edited by C.W. Sarum. Okay. And he wrote God's Graves and Scholars, which I think I have. But yeah, I love these old books. And so I was just, this was $8. But, I get like 10% off, I think, in my first visit there. So, Hands on the Past. Let's see here. Most of the heroic and romantic and some of the villainous figures in Sarum's previous book, God's Graves and Scholars, reappear here in their own words, from Schliemann and Winckelmann to Lerici, from Howard Carter, Petrie and John Lloyd Stevens to Cousteau, Von Hagen, and Geoffrey Bibby. In covering the archaeology of the entire Mediterranean world, Egypt, the Middle East, and Central America, Sarum has stressed the moment of discovery and what is sometimes called serendipity. In his introduction, he points out that archaeology has been called both a science and an art, but that most of it is an adventure, in one form or another, whether fighting the rigors of jungle or desert or the obstructions of stupid or venal officials. So there is much adventure, including the thrills of scientific discovery in this book. Forgers and greedy antique dealers play their part, as do the new scientific methods derived from atomic physics, aviation, and underwater exploration. Sweet. So basically, if you enjoyed his other work, you'll enjoy this one. That's really cool. I love these old books, and they smell really good too. It's like a compilation. Thank you. I can't think of the word. Of articles and essays, and plenty of illustrations, photographs. I think that's Howard Carter, I believe. Opening the doors of the shrine, which contain the golden coffins of Tutankhamun. Very cool. So heck yeah, if you like archaeology and the history of archaeology, this was a good book to find and pick up. All right. The next book, this is just jumping all over the place. That's okay. I think I know why I bought this book, because I bought two other books by this guy based off of someone else's recommendation. I think it was a Peggy Noonan webinar. Well, they were interviewing her, but she was also interviewing someone else, and it was a really intriguing dialogue. But she mentioned this writer, Theodore White, and that his series, The Making of the President, which were 4 books, and I bought 2 of them, so I still need the other 2, and I still need to start one of them. But I wanted to make that a project for this year. It's not going to happen this year, but obviously we're running out of time. And it's been a rough month, and last month was rough too. But she really loved his writing on the presidential campaigns, and he's a really great political writer apparently. So I wanted to check it out. Now this is his other book that I had never seen before. It was only $3.95, and again, I love these old books with these old covers. It's Theodore White, H. White's Breach of Faith, The Fall of Richard Nixon. Now, this version is a Athenaeum Reader's Digest Press. So again, old books, and I just love going to these bookstores and finding old books, the way they used to make them. Yeah, he wrote The Making of the President, 1960. These are the two that I have. The Making of the President, 19. I haven't shown them on this channel yet, but I bought them over Amazon because they were really cheap at the time. But I have The Making of the President, 1960, and then The Making of the President, 1964, and then of course, and it goes 68 and then 1972. So I need those last two. The last two, but I've read a lot about Watergate and Richard Nixon, but I've not read anything by Theodore White, and it was right in front of me, so I grabbed it. Let's see here. Well, it just says The Fall of Richard Nixon. So it says here, all nations live by myths, writes Theodore H. White. Nowhere, however, are myths more important than in America. Take away the myths of other people, and Frenchmen will remain Frenchmen, Englishmen, Englishmen, and Chinese, Chinese. Nationality descends from their loins. Okay? But take away the myths that bind Americans together with their differences of race, culture, and tradition, and America would dissolve, he writes, quote, into a sad geographical expression where whites killed blacks, blacks killed whites, and Protestants, Catholics, Jews made of their cities a constellation of Belfasts. Okay, interesting. And this was what the Nixon crisis of 1973 and 1974 threatened, as the nation realized that the myth of their president as a man of law had been betrayed, that equality before the law might now become a fiction, that Vice President Agnew was a grafter, that the national intelligence agencies had slipped from control, and that for the first time in their history, a president would have to be removed. And it goes on to talk about how, he starts the story with the last days of Richard Nixon. He unravels the tangled episodes that fascinate and mystify Americans. How and why were the famous tapes conceived, and why were they not destroyed? What motivated the self-righteous men about Nixon, and how did they, step by step, glide across the law and enlist the hustlers, the spies, the thugs of the underground? And he goes on. It's interesting. It says here at the end, giving credit to Richard Nixon for his achievements as president and peacemaker, White explains how he betrayed his spectacular victory of 1972 by breaking faith, as much with those who voted for him as with those who voted against him. So, Breach of Faith, The Fall of Richard Nixon by Theodore H. White. If I think of it, I'll try to show you those other two books that they're in the other room right now, that I got. You know what? Hang on. I can pause. Let me do that. Okay. So, yes, these were the other two I was talking about that I picked up. The Making of the President, 1960 by Theodore H. White, winner of the Pulitzer Prize. And it's part of the landmark political series, but they recently came out in these great new Harper Perennial political classics. And I picked these up for, about less than $12 each on Amazon. So I picked up 1960, and then The Making of the President, 1968. And of course, obviously, there's and there's 1964 in the middle that I need to pick up, and then 1972. So I picked up the two cheapest at the time. So that kind of will go with Theodore H. White. I'll have a nice little Theodore White collection going on there. Okay, so what's next? What else did I find searching the used stacks? I got this one. This was a Barnes & Noble's book. So, I didn't realize that, but that's okay. This is The Twilight Lords. The fierce, doomed struggle of the last great feudal lords of Ireland against the England of Elizabeth I by Richard Burleth. I realized that was a Barnes & Noble's creation. It was $3. And, with Martine being from Ireland, I'm trying to learn more about their history all the time. I thought this was a good pickup. It's a good overview of, the political state at the time of Ireland, the different provinces or areas, the kingdoms, I guess you'd call them. Um, they all had their own kings. There wasn't one overall king. Maybe technically when you got to Brian Boru, but I could be wrong. It says here, the reign of Queen Elizabeth I has long been characterized as the first and finest flowering of English literature, patriotism, and public virtue. But there is a dark, forgotten aspect to Elizabeth's reign. English national pride and commercial growth were paid for in blood. The blood not only of those whose lands were coveted, but of those servants of the British state who marched into battle in the name of their queen. The Twilight Lords is the chronicle of the ferocious 20-year struggle between the English monarch and the feudal lords of Ireland. Seeking to expand her territory and fearing a Catholic plot to unite Ireland with her other European enemies, Elizabeth sent army after army of seasoned troops, under such men as Sir Walter Raleigh and the Earl of Essex, to do battle against the fierce clans of the Irish chieftains. Among them, Gerald Fitzgerald, James Fitzmaurice, and the greatest leader of them all, Hugh O'Neill, the Earl of Tyrone. Oh, that's right. Brian Boru was way back in like the 1000s. I think about it. Okay, so that was not right. The pacification of Ireland began as a policing action, but escalated to a full-scale operation due to the tenacity and savagery of the Irish soldiers and the difficulties of the Irish terrain. It's going to be a good read, I think. The result was prolonged guerrilla warfare, with the English armies being drawn deeper and deeper into both literal and military quagmires. For the Irish, the results were a horrific, near-total depopulation of the Irish countryside through war, famine, plague. For the English, the loss of many thousands of men and the bankruptcy of several of the great families. In the end, England triumphed, as she had to, given her greater resources and political unity. But by the time the last and greatest of the rebels surrendered, Elizabeth was 3 days in her grave. 2 waves of English settlers had been exterminated. Almost half the Irish people were dead, and the southern part of Ireland had become a barren wilderness. I did not know any of this. This is like, I'm just discovering this aspect of this area of its history at that time. I did not know that this was going on in the reign of Elizabeth, and that how devastating it was. And not just for the Irish, but also for England. It says here that Ireland had fallen, but her resolve had withstood the English onslaught. Wow. So it's by Richard Burleth, and I had never heard of it before. So, The Twilight Lords. Oh, yes, this was a great find. I kept meaning to get this book, and in an edition that was relatively new, and I tried to find it in hardcover, but you know what? I found it for softcover, and I'm really happy to have it. And this is Return of a King, The Battle for Afghanistan, 1839 to 42, by William Dalrymple, who also wrote The Last Mughal. It's about by Viking, but this came out a while ago, and I kept meaning to get it for my Afghanistan studies. This came out in 2013. It says, in 1839, nearly 20,000 British troops poured through the mountain passes into Afghanistan and installed the exiled Shah Shuja on the throne as their puppet. But after a little more than 2 years, the Afghans exploded into rebellion. The British were forced to retreat and were then ambushed in the mountains by simply equipped Afghan tribesmen. Just one British man made it through. William Dalrymple takes us beyond the story of this colonial humiliation and illuminates the key connections between then and now. Shah Shuja and President Hamid Karzai share the same tribal heritage. The Shah's principal opponents were the Ghilzai tribe, who today make up the bulk of the Taliban's foot soldiers. Dalrymple explains the Byzantine complexity of Afghanistan's age-old tribal rivalries, their stranglehold on politics, and how they ensnared both the British of the 19th century and NATO forces today. This stunning narrative is the definitive account of the first battle for Afghanistan. Finally able to get a hold of this bad boy in a pretty rarely good softcover edition. Very happy to have this. One of my other videos, you saw that I got a bargain book from Hamilton about the Karzai family, that dynasty. So it's interesting that they trace their lineage back to Shah Shuja, the one of the main protagonists in this book, or antagonists, depending on which side you're coming from. So yeah, I thought that was a great find at the used bookstore. All right. Ooh, I was so excited to find this as well. I kept meaning to get this book, and I've been wanting to read this writer. If you can believe it, I have not read anything yet by V.S. Naipaul, and or Naipaul, and I've been wanting to, especially his ruminations on Islam and his own journey through it and among the believers. And actually, that's the name of this book. I was able to find it. This is V.S. Naipaul's Among the Believers, an Islamic Journey. Nice deckle-edged edition by Alfred Knopf. There's our author on the back. Still have the sticker. It was $3.50 at good old Second and Charles. 1981. This was written. So, if any of you have read V.S. Naipaul, please write something in the comments. Let me know what you think and what other works by him you recommend. But I've been meaning to start reading his work. It says here, for this book, it says, one of the most brilliant and astute writers of our time here gives us, on the basis of his own intensive 7-month journey across the Asian continent, an unprecedented revelation of the Islamic world today. With all the narrative power and intellectual authority that have distinguished his earlier books and won him international acclaim, Naipaul explores the life, the culture, the current ferment inside the nations of Islam, in a book that combines the fascinations of the great works of travel literature with the insights of a uniquely sharp, original, and idiosyncratic political mind. He takes us into 4 countries now in the throes of Islamization. Mind you, this was written in 1981. Okay, so says here, countries that in their ardor to build new societies based entirely on the fundamental laws of Islam have violently rejected the materialism of the technologically advanced nations that have long supported and ironically still support them. He brings us close to the people of Islam, how they live and work, the role of faith in their lives, and how they see their place in the modern world. So it says here, we accompany him through Iran, where the modern streets of Tehran are bustling not with industry but with hysteria. Again, this is going to be dated, but it's still useful from a historical standpoint. Then we go to Pakistan, a pioneer of 20th century Islamic revival. Now, 32 years after its founding, it's much longer now, as a homeland for the Muslims of India, still tragically undeveloped. That might still be the case. Then we go to Malaysia. Amazingly prosperous thanks to oil and rubber and the skills of the Chinese who have been there for decades and constitute 1/2 of the population. Interesting. And then finally he talks about Indonesia. Confused about its Muslim roots, confused about its national roots, confused into virtual quiescence by the successive rule of 4 regimes, 2 of them foreign, in less than 4 decades. Fabulous. Well, I'm glad to finally have one of his books, and let me know what you think of his works and if you recommend any others. Okay. Oh yeah, here's another book where I'm either going to have to throw away the dust jacket because it's so flimsy, or I might reinforce it with some tape or something. How did I come across this? I don't know, but I thought, you know what? I love military memoirs, and this is like pretty dope. This is My 3 Years with Eisenhower, the personal diary of Captain Harry C. Butcher, naval aide to General Eisenhower, 1942 to 1945. And look how old this book is, and I love it. Simon & Schuster, and there's our guy. I think this was $5. It even had the little book club press release in here, or whatever it was. The book is kind of falling apart right here, but that's about it, I think. The rest of it's pretty sturdy. Lots of photographs and stuff, but this edition is it's very kind of cool. This edition, it's probably one. It's not the oldest book I own, but it's up there. This isn't. This was printed in 1946. I'm holding a 1946 book here, guys. Isn't that great? Oh, I even got someone's personal library. Thanks, Carlos. Yeah, look at that. I might just take off the dust jacket. I don't know. I don't think I need this. Okay, but let's find out a little bit about this, right? I haven't heard of Harry Butcher, so. Let's see. It says here, I wish to make it clear to the reader, writes Captain Butcher in his introduction, that this effort is my responsibility and not General Eisenhower's. Yet I like to think that, although I wrote this book, General Eisenhower lived it. General Eisenhower did indeed live it. So did Franklin Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, Harry Hopkins, Bernard Montgomery, and General George Marshall, and the dozens of others of the English and American leaders who bore in their minds and in their hearts the terrible responsibility of planning and executing the war against Axis Europe. For this book is a new kind of history, a backstage account of the movements of the most important actors in the greatest drama ever played. It is a unique combination of intense human interest and grand strategy, providing countless intimate glimpses of the key members of the Allied family, their relations with each other, their private and hitherto unpublished views on the greatest questions of the era, their human failings, and their essential greatness. It is a book written in the midst of mighty happenings as they were occurring. It is highly personal, setting down as it does epoch-making events side by side with delightfully human trivia. It is studded with history-making messages, events, and conversations. Completely informal in tone, it is nevertheless a volume which will become a source book for future historians, telling as it does the story of the highlights of each day in General Eisenhower's life from the gloomy summer of 1942 through Operation Torch, which was the invasion of North Africa, through Operation Overlord, and that is D-Day, the cross-channel invasion, and to Operation Eclipse, the final disintegration of the German armed forces. My 3 years with Eisenhower could have been written only by the man who lived with Dwight D. Eisenhower day and night, who acted as his friend and confidant, whose duties ranged from opening the general's car door to handling such ticklish jobs as the battle between General Patton and Sergeant Bill Malden, who saw Dwight Eisenhower in his intimate day-by-day life develop from a relatively unknown staff officer to the commander of the greatest military operation in all history. So you can tell, like, that book jacket copy, definitely, they don't really write copy like that anymore, book jackets. I really like, definitely something written in the 40s. But how cool. And I've never heard of Harry C. Butcher. This guy. So I picked it up for $5. I said, why not? Okay, so you know what? We're at 33 minutes. I'm going to do one more book, and then I'll make part 2. So I'm kind of breaking these up. I have another book by this gentleman I picked up at the same time. But I'll show you this one. See, this is anthropology of some sort. This is called The Mountain People by Colin M. Turnbull. You know, I love reading about different, Simon & Schuster. This is an old book. Look at this old artwork and cover. I love it. I love reading about different cultures and different peoples across the world. Oh, I love having books that have someone else's name in there. It's just so cool. And someone else read this and loved it. Let's see here. In this beautifully observed and beautifully written book, the distinguished author of The Forest People, spoiler alert, that's the other book that I was able to find, so that's going to be in the next video, and The Lonely African describes the slow death and destruction of a tribe of African hunters whose social disintegration parallels in many ways that of our own society. The Ik, and that's spelled I-K, are a small group of hunters isolated in the mountains separating Uganda, the Sudan, and Kenya, who have been driven from their natural hunting grounds into these barren wastes by the creation of a national game reserve. forbidden to chase the animals that once fed them, asked, though bereft of the experience, the technology, and the social organization that would make farming possible, to become farmers in a land without rain. In less than 3 generations, they have deteriorated from a group of prosperous and daring hunters to scattered bands of hostile people whose only goal is individual survival, and who have learned that the price of survival is to give up compassion, love, affection, kindness, and concern, even for their own children. The Ik can and do steal food from the mouths of their parents, throw infants out to fend for themselves, abandon the old, the sick, and crippled to die without a backward glance. Walled into their compounds, living in fear of each neighbor, indifferent to anything but their own individual welfare, the Ik have evolved a society whose ethics and beliefs derive from their predicament, and whose destructive qualities mirror the cold and lonely selfishness of our own, though we do not have their excuse of starvation and exile. In The Mountain People, Colin Turnbull has written a book as original and profound as The Forest People, in which his love of Africa, his understanding of primitive peoples, his unique capacity for recreating the people and the world of a particular tribe are joined with a remorseless description of a social collapse and decay unmatched since the publication of Oscar Lewis's La Vida. I've never heard of that book. As Carlton Kuhn writes, Turnbull comes to the sad conclusion that the same kinds of societal breakdown, so vividly portrayed by his meticulous study of the Ik, are beginning to produce the same results among ourselves. A gloomy prognostication, which I am beginning to share. So this book was written. When was this book written? 1972. And this is a 1972 copy. Oh, I even like it even more. Oh, I just took off the dust jacket. Look at that. Oh, I think I like it even without the dust jacket with the original artwork, but it's a beautiful book. Anyway, it sounds very intriguing. I'd never heard of this tribe and did not know of the dire situation. I wonder, I'll have to Google them after I read this to see if they are even still in existence. So The Mountain People by Colin M. Turnbull. So that closes out the first bag of my Second and Charles used book haul from a few months ago that I only am just now sharing because of different events. Thought we were moving, didn't, whatever. So I pulled them back out and I said, let me show these books to everyone out there because, it's a long Thanksgiving weekend and I figure a lot of people are maybe hungry for, no pun intended, are hungry for some bookish videos. I've been looking at BookTube and, everyone's busy visiting and that's great. I'm just not seeing a lot of content. And so I thought, well, let me put something out there for those who might be jonesing for some book ideas, and these are backlist book ideas and I have more coming. So please do look for part 2 and tune in for that. So until next time, BookTube, take care. We'll talk soon.